Good evening from the News Radio, 1120 AM and 93.7 FM KPNW studios. I am Andreas Bjorkman, but you can call me Bill Lundin. I do the wake-up call 6 a.m. to 9 on KPNW, also streaming live worldwide at kpnw.com. Just click on the Listen Now thing if you ever want to hear what goes on. And for you folks in Montana, listen to us, because we do a bunch of stuff. That's what we call it, stuff. All right, here's what's going on. A group of female Republican lawmakers made demands and demand action by the Oregon School Activities Association. And for folks that don't know, they're sort of the governing body of school sports K through 12 in Oregon, sort of like the NCAA in college. And they made the demands for action after a transgender student placed third in the girls' division at a Sherwood track competition near Portland. A dozen state representatives and senators signed a letter to the OSAA director saying they are left with no choice but to encourage parents to pull their girls out of competitions in which biologically male athletes are allowed to participate. They also say they plan to pursue a statutory change in the 2025 legislative session to remove records set by biologically male athletes in girls' sports. The GOP lawmakers also asked the OSAA to change its gender identity participation policy. It currently states that it has a goal to promote harmony and fair competition among schools. So far, the OSAA has not responded to the letter. All right, well, it's a win, finally, kind of, sort of, from a courtroom in Oregon dealing with Ballot Measure 114. The Oregon Court of Appeals has said it will not override an Eastern Oregon judge's ruling that puts the state's gun control measure 114 on hold, at least not right now. The appeals court did agree, though, to speed up the time before it'll hear arguments in the case. Now, Measure 114, if you don't know, if it goes into effect, would make Oregon's gun control laws the strictest in the nation. It would require that a prospective gun owner receive a permit before they could even purchase a gun, preceded by a formalized training course, of which none have been set up, and there's no way to know what's supposed to be a part of that training course, although it is supposed to include range training. The law would also ban the sale and manufacture of gun magazines that hold more than 10 rounds of ammunition and make thousands of Oregonians criminals because they own magazines that hold more than 10 rounds. Now, Measure 114 passed with barely over 50% of voters in favor back in November of 2022. But despite its passage, the law has never taken effect due to lawsuits at both the state and the federal level. Now, after a circuit court judge in Harney County in eastern Oregon, Robert Rocchio, ruled that the law couldn't go into effect because it violated the state constitution, well, that's when the DOJ decided that they were going to appeal the case and try to get it to go onto the books right now while it was under appeal. They say they want it to take effect right now. Well, ultimately, the Oregon Court of Appeals said no. The appeals court said it looked at a number of factors, deciding on whether to do what the state wanted, which is called granting a stay. Now, granting a stay would put Measure 114 into effect immediately, and the court said they can use other facts to decide the issue. But here's the factors they considered. 1, the likelihood that the state would win its argument. 2, whether the action the state wanted was taken in good faith and not for the purpose of delay. 3, whether there is any support in fact or in the law for what the state wanted. And 4, the nature of harm to the state or other parties, to the other person and the public that'll likely result from doing what the state wanted or not doing it. So first, would it prevail? The Oregon Appeals Court said that each side had good arguments, so they thought either side could win. The court brushed aside the second and third points since the state is not trying to delay but speed things up. And as they said back in point number 1, both sides had good arguments. On point number 4, the nature of harm, the state argued it has an interest in enforcing laws, especially those that promote public safety during what they call an epidemic of violence, even though the State Department of Justice says that violent crime is down. That said, the court didn't buy it. The court said the state could only point to what they called speculative harm. In other words, their fear of a shooting, and that's just not good enough. The Oregon Court of Appeals, though, agreed to speed up the hearing of the case, speed being a relative term. The court set a deadline of 119 days from April 12th for the two sides to submit their legal arguments and the responses. Well, once again, the Oregon Employment Department strikes out. Case in point, meet David Frank. He's from Junction City, and he's expressed frustration with Oregon's paid leave program due to long wait times, miscommunication, and nearly 18 weeks of processing. Now, his complaints are not solitary. There have been thousands of complaints just like this since Oregon paid leave became law in Oregon and went into effect August of last year. But this is one individual case that's representative of, well, several thousand. So according to Frank, he says, well, I don't see what the program is for. If they're not going to help you, why do we have it? Now, David Frank underwent knee surgery on December 11th, and he planned to use the state's paid leave program to make up for missed weeks of work. Then, an unexpected surgery for his wife left their household, at least temporarily, completely without income. Now, David works part-time and heavily relies on Social Security payments to take care of his family of 5. He says it's been months of confusing phone calls, paperwork mishaps, and conflicting directions from customer service providers at the Oregon Employment Department. So he applied for paid leave on December 7th, and a customer service representative confirmed on December 10th, the day before his surgery, that, oh yeah, you're eligible for payments, don't worry. And then the problem started. He actually had to cancel his original application and start a new one 3 weeks ago, but has yet to receive any help or payments on the program. And this has been verified by the media. He allowed them to look at his online claims. And yeah, it was a mess. Multiple times, given multiple answers by the Oregon Employment Department. Oregon's legislature, by the way, approved the Oregon Paid Leave Program back in 2019. It didn't start until August 14th of 2023. And since then, it has been nothing but a mess. But again, this is Oregon's Employment Department, which essentially is a walking disaster and has been ever since the pandemic. Frank's story reflects on an ongoing problem with the new program, which the Oregon Employment Department says helpfully, we're working on it. They've been working on it since August of 2023. According to recent data from the National Instant Criminal Background Check System, Released by the FBI, Oregon has seen a recent huge surge in firearm background checks. According to the data, Oregon saw a 43% increase in firearm background checks from February to March, with over 47,000 in March alone. Now, those, in case you didn't know, are the background checks that are done when a person goes into a store and wants to buy a gun. That's a lot of sales. And in this case, nationally, for the first time, we can say, with a little bit of pride, we're number one. We're number one. So I-5 southbound in the Eugene area was temporarily closed Monday morning by demonstrators protesting Israel's war against the terrorist group Hamas in Gaza. People waving Palestinian flags blocked the freeway near the Barlow Bridge. And finally, more than 50 people were arrested for disorderly conduct. 2 were also charged with other crimes. 1 person had a gun, although whether they were legally carrying concealed or not hasn't been released. OSP said the demonstration put drivers in danger along with the protesters who blocked the interstate. It's an interstate. I-5 is the major thoroughfare from the border of Mexico and California all the way up to Canada. And what accordingly happened was that there were a lot of problems with that. 48 troopers, officers from Eugene, Springfield Police Departments, the Lane County Sheriff's Office, even the fire department responded to the incident, leaving, of course, law enforcement throughout Lane County lacking in people to actually, deal with violent crimes. And it should be noted that this particular issue and this protest was a blockage of I-5 that the protesters referred to as an economic disruption to slow commerce to bring attention to the war in Palestine, which they referred to as genocide. Okay, so they wanted to block trucks from, getting their cargo to wherever they're delivering their cargo to. Here's at least a couple of things that happened. One person complained on social media that I was able to find that because of that blockage and because of the area's lack of doctors, this is a completely different issue though, she was going to her doctor for an appointment that was scheduled 6 weeks ago to deal with a series of tests to see if she has cancer. Now, because she was over an hour late for that appointment, she couldn't have the appointment. And now we'll be waiting for another 8 weeks. We're talking about somebody who may have cancer. And it was blocked by a bunch of tantrum-throwing protesters. Another issue, since Eugene no longer has an actual emergency room, anybody that's in an ambulance or has a medical emergency now has to go to Springfield. One of the fastest way to get there? I-5. Well, guess what? Ambulances were also blocked because of this, because of protesters in Eugene, Oregon, that are saying, in their words, a genocide is going on in, of course, Gaza, failing to mention that entire war was started by a bunch of Hamas terrorists attacking, torturing, killing, and still holding Israelis hostage. In a connected story, by the way, Benjamin Netanyahu announced today that he apologizes to Eugene on behalf of all Israelis and has now called for an immediate ceasefire because he finally understands that the Eugene protesters have a higher moral authority and that they understand the situation in the Middle East far better than the people who actually live there, and he apologizes for the inconvenience. Well, thank you, Benny. We appreciate it. And finally, a 50-cent hike to Oregon's minimum wage will bring the baseline pay in the Portland area to just about $16 an hour this summer. $16 an hour to say, would you like fries with that? Oregon's Bureau of Labor and Industries announced Tuesday that the minimum wage in Portland will go to $15.95 an hour. In urban counties outside of Portland, like Lane County, Lynn County, and Benton County, the minimum wage will increase to $14.70 an hour, and in rural counties like, say, Douglas County or over in eastern Oregon, the minimum will be $13.70 an hour. That change takes effect on July 1st. And there you have it. That's a look at some of the stories we're following. And with that, Rick, feel free to maybe open up a nice, well-aged bottle of Real and pour it in a glass. Enjoy its nose. Get real, Rick.